Do we have to do something different? Is this, oh, budget workshop.
Who's up first?
Patty, can you let
Oh.
Carol Granfield in? She's
No,
waiting for the webinar.
I apologize, Mr. Mayor. Can we, in the essence of time and just whatever, can we have the chief go first? And then we can do the salary study and then Bobby Joe's? So he's not sitting through the salary study, then Bobby
The
Joe's
salary
budget?
study's during the meeting.
No, we're gonna talk about it right now. Salary
ahead.
study
Yep.
is the first part.
I agree.
Thank you.
Yep. Is there a second for that? Do I need a second for that?
you don't need a second for that.
We're good. Chief,
Evening, chief.
Flip it up. Yep.
Good evening. Am I on?
you're gonna want to bring it closer to you, but maybe.
How about now?
Nope.
It's gotta be up.
Yeah, it's on. Up is
It's
on.
on. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Good evening, Mayor, councilors. To present my budget, I'm assuming that all of you got my summary review, and I think that's the importance where it gives the highlights of the fiscal budget that I'm currently presenting. So to say the least, over the last couple of years and the events that's unfolded as we sat down and tried to put a budget together with COVID and what's going on around the world, it's, impacting our wages and everything that we buy, and gasoline and energy certainly was a challenge. But to go over the summary, I think is probably the easiest and kind of highlights where the increases in my budget is. And so if you look at the wages and benefits, you'll see that in the summary budget, there's a new lieutenant's position that has been included along with a mental health worker. That's a pretty significant increase. In addition, we've had a fairly large increase with our contractual wages that came about this year, so that increased, again, our wage line significantly. Operationally wise, I think, gasoline obviously almost doubled that I anticipate as we're looking at $5, $6, who knows, $7 per gallon. That may was a significant increase in that particular line item. Our animal control line is pretty much stable, flat across the board. It increased overall between labor and operational expenses a couple of $1,000s. Again, our communication center increased, and most of that increase, again, was a wage increase, health benefits, and for the union side, Main State Retirement was a significant increase, as you all know, because we changed to a different plan that gave a cost of living. So that increased the wages on the union side considerably. I think if you look at our overall budget of 5.180 minus revenues, we have a present budget for 22-23 at 4.775, an increase of about $624,000. And again, those increases predominantly represent wage increases, Main State Retirement costs, insurance costs for some, the additional positions of a lieutenant, which would start, I believe, October 1st, so we'd be paying about 3/4 of that salary because it won't be a complete year. Additionally, we have hired and put in the budget 3 part-time dispatchers. It requires now that the comm center, with the amount of calls for service that we continue to increase, and when we have vacations and people who are out sick or extended sick leave, it's critical that we maintain a level of dispatches in there to ensure our customers that we're going to provide that public safety service dispatching at that particular level. So again, although it's a fairly large budget, the increase is of around $624,000, and I think I've explained pretty much the bulk of where all that increase is. Operationally wise, we did not go up very much, other than a few line items, including adding 2 vehicles to this present budget at, I believe it was $96,000. So that's where my increases lie for this budget, and if you have any other questions or concerns, I'll be glad to try to answer them for you.
And go ahead, Rick.
Chief, police range, firearms range, should I say. You and I looked at it last year, and we're thinking spring was gonna be rough on it. Spring has come and gone. How bad was it?
I think it fared very, very well.
Okay.
I think there were just a few things that we have to do that I didn't think warranted increasing any additional funding for the range.
Nothing year over year is where I'm getting at as far as maintenance, bringing in more loose gravel and stuff like that.
That will eventually happen, but at its present state, where it sits right now, and it's just become operational last year,
Sure.
is something that we do have to start thinking about
Okay.
as we move forward.
Okay. But nothing in it this year, right?
No.
Okay. Thanks, Chief.
Counselor Frankie.
Just to reiterate what I've been saying throughout these budget discussions, Chief, the main thing driving the increase in your budget is the wage increases that we made in our collective bargaining agreement with the police union. What I would like to point out to the folks listening at home is these wage increases put us up into a position where we're able to, I believe, if I'm correct, we're better able to recruit and retain the police staff. Is that correct, Chief?
Absolutely. It's made us very competitive. I think we were lagging behind considerably. This brought us up, I think, what the market pays out right now in the profession, particularly in our area. So yes, it accomplished that. And that was a significant benefit for recruitment and retention.
And that's what my point being, that one of the things that we're going to talk about a little later is the wage study that Human Resources has done, and that's here's one of the places where we actually got out ahead of things in our collective bargaining with the police union. Thank you, Chief.
Well,
Any other questions for Chief? Counselor Green?
Chief, could you tell us a little bit about why the lieutenant position is important in your budget?
it's an important position because there is no rank between the deputy chief and the sergeants. Currently, with the amount of administrative work we have, we assign administrative work to sergeants that's outside their job description. And they do it knowing that it helps operations efficiency, and it's a good thing for us to do because the deputy chief and I just can't manage all the operational issues for 42 full-time employees, the operation, the equipment. And so if there's any place our chain of command communication breaks down is between the deputy chief and the sergeants. It's a 24/7 operation. We're Monday through Friday. And so that mid-level management position would help greatly to give better oversight over special operations like CID, Communication Center, animal control, parking enforcement, all which sort of fall on the sergeants. And then, again, that communication would increase tremendously between administration, meaning the deputy chief and I, and the operational side if we had that position available to us. So there's a lot of things that we could take from the sergeants, let them do their job as patrol sergeants, detective sergeants, and take that administrative work away from them.
Okay, thank you. And what's the connection with ARPA?
With what?
I guess that's more of a question for I don't know who it's a question for,
For Bill?
for Bill.
Go ahead, Bill.
Councilor Green, so the proposal from the Finance Committee was to fund the lieutenant's position and the mental health worker position from the ARPA funding for this next year. And then that would allow us to not have as much of an impact on the taxpayer for this first year of those two positions. And then moving forward, we would put together a schedule, if you will, that would allow us to wean off the ARPA funding. So maybe, maybe the year after we do 50% or 75%, and then 50% or 25%. So then eventually it's all funded by through the tax levy.
Yeah, I just don't remember that being the conclusion of the Finance Committee. I can see that the position's important, but I think we should just look at carefully at how we're spending that money. With the mental health worker, it seems to me to make sense. But anyway, just wanted to take a look at that.
Chief.
Yeah, and
Oh, go ahead, Bill.
sorry, just to follow up. So the final rule changes that came down from the U.S. Treasury Department about ARPA allow the city to use all of our ARPA funding for general government services, as they call it. That was the final ruling. So that's, I think, also goes into the thought process behind ARPA funding for the lieutenant position.
Yeah, what I recall at the Finance Committee meeting was covering the code position with those funds. So,
Which was correct. You're not wrong. Chief,
Yes.
that lieutenant position, will that make your department more efficient?
Oh, absolutely. It would make the department more efficient. Again, I think operationally wise, it's a huge benefit. The lieutenant would there would be some specialties that we'd want them to do. Look at grant funding to help us do that, which we have very little time to do, but we try the best we can to make sure that we take advantage of every grant we have. But operational wise and efficiency wise, there's so many other things that we have a difficult time to look at it at the level that I'd like, say looking at our data and looking at where we best utilize our resources, and those types of things would help operationally wise, efficient, would utilize our resources, I think, much better, and that communication piece would be there. And again, not fair to the sergeants that they're actually doing a lot of administrative work, which is not in their job description, and they don't have to do it. They're doing it because, again, they're team players. They can see it helps out the department, and it makes the department run much smoother when they do that.
When you relieve that work from the sergeants, how impactful will that be on all of the citizens of Waterville? How much more are they going to get?
Specifically to public safety.
Yes.
But I think there'll be a lot greater oversight, obviously, and supervision on the patrol division. They do a great job, and they work out there, and they got a lot of autonomy. But when the sergeants are tasked with a lot of administrative work, they'll take that supervision time away, and not just the supervision, but to meet with the officers, do more training during their roll call, and things that they dedicate to administrative work right now. So I think the benefit is that the patrol division is better utilized throughout the city. They get a lot more time with the sergeants to speak about what the issues are, and taking a look at where we really need to concentrate on, instead of, again, taking their time out, some of their time, to do the administrative work.
Councilor Frankie.
Yes, Chief, it sounds like it might be a good idea to have the lieutenant position, but the way you kind of fleshed it out orally sounds promising. Would you be good enough to draft a job description so that we could have a little bit more in the way of concrete, a concrete idea of what this position? This is a new position. We don't. Is that correct?
Yes, and we definitely need a job description. So we're already looking at that, so we would have a job description ready very shortly here.
Okay, I think that'll be, for me, that's being able to see exactly what the position's going to do and what the impact is going to be on the overall operations and for the sergeants. And I do want to give a shout out to the sergeants because they are the ones who are making the department operate on the ground, and I think they do a pretty good job of that.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Chief? Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Today. Who's next, Bill?
I would, if you want to go to the consultant for the salary study, and then we can talk about the HR budget, which those are both tied together. So if Patty could let the consultant in, Carol Granfield, from Municipal Resources, Inc.
Yep, I just promoted Carol to, as a panelist. Carol, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. And can you hear me? I unmuted. I don't see a video of me, but I don't know if the PowerPoint will come up or what. Oh, here's video. Okay, there I am. Hello.
Carol, you
Yeah,
should
and
have
I-
the ability to screen share.
Okay, let me try that and see if that comes up. Can you see it on the screen yet?
Nope.
No.
No, bear with me. It's on my screen, but not yours apparently.
This is why we had the chief go first.
It's uploading it right now. Now, it's, for some reason, it's not coming on. I guess I can
Are you
just
able-
go over the information verbally then.
Is she able to pull it up, Patty? Or are you, Patty?
I don't have it, but
If she emails it, can you email
Carol,
it to
could you
Patty?
email it to me? Is it a really big file or?
No, actually, I sent it to Bill earlier today. Let me see.
Yeah, let me see if I can email it to Patty.
Okay.
Well, Bill, could you share your screen?
I can try.
Yeah, in the essence of time.
It might be the same issue.
Be a radioactive test. There we go.
You got it?
Yep, we got it.
Is it on? Oh, okay. Let's see. Okay, I can see it. I guess you'll have to move it though. Is that true?
Yes.
Yep,
Look in
just
advance.
tell me when you want to.
Oh, okay, all right. You can, well, good evening. Sorry for the confusion there. I'm Carol Granfield. You can go to the next slide. I'm with Municipal Resources. We're out of Plymouth, New Hampshire, and we do studies all over New England, this being one type of study that we conduct. If you go to the next slide. The major goals of the project, we had were to collect the wage and benefit data from comparable communities and evaluate all the positions for internal and external equity. We conducted the study with benefits and salary for both your non-union and union positions, 61 of them, classifications, and developed a plan for your non-union, and the data was used for union negotiations. We've made recommendations for job description updates, and we also, during the process of this, conducted a staffing and organizational observations that I'll talk about just at the end, and we prepared fiscal impact analysis with implementations, and then you have the final report, and this is, I'll present some of the information to you. Next slide, please. We use a solid methodology question, and you have a couple of options there, asking the city how competitive do they want to be. As such, we conducted our job evaluation internally to evaluate the positions and looked at the external market, conducted the analysis, and then developed the pay and classification plan as a result of that. Next slide, please. So the study's providing you and ensuring that your jobs are classified appropriately and that the pay is competitive to the market and fairly structured. The city has procedures to keep up the system. They have a rating system to assist them for future positions, and the pay is based on a fair and documented information, and you need that for your backup. The city has a compensation and classification system that's easy to manage for the city, and it ensures pay equity for the positions. Next slide. The process, and this will go through, we did an orientation with all the department heads. We conducted interviews to gain additional information. We also provided updated information for job descriptions. We evaluated the positions for internal equity, and there are 14 factors we utilized for that piece. We analyzed the salary and benefit data from comparable cities and towns. We also reviewed the findings with the city, and during the process, we were working with them on various different issues that came up that they brought to our attention. We worked with the city to develop a cost out plan, which is helpful for your budgeting. We also developed the preliminary plan for the non-union, and as I said, the data was utilized for union negotiations as well, and developed a report with recommendations. The next slide is we looked at various criteria for comparables, and these are some of the factors we looked at in Maine: size, location, per capita, and had input also from your city manager and departments. Now, the next slide shows the communities that we received data from. There's 17 of them, and there are no perfect matches, that's for sure. Each position can be slightly different, as you can see, but this gives us some data to look at from these 17 communities. So it was a good group of communities to review. The next slide shows the analysis we did. We had salary ranges for each of the positions. We looked at information for the market for the 60th and 75th percentile. We compared apples with apples. So in looking at the data, if someone had a 40-hour work week and another was a 37.5-hour, we adjusted it so it was comparing comparable salaries. And we gathered information on other pay-related data. The next slide covers the benefits analysis, and we have that at the end of your report. We looked at all your various insurances, as well as other pay-related benefits and vacation, sick time, all of that. The next slide, we like to look at for both your salary and benefits, the combined package. And you do have a rich benefit package, but the salaries were on the low side. So we look at both of those when we come up with the final analysis. The next slide covers some of the findings and recommendations. We had The salaries were low and not really competitive with the market. We see that all over now. The last 2 years, COVID has changed many things, and positions are continually going up in pay rate. The new pay scale we propose for non-union has a 40% range from the minimum and maximum with an open rate range. We also have a dispatcher scale, which is 40% range, but it's similar to their current, which is slightly different than the totally open range for the non-union. We looked at providing two options. The 60th percentile, we used to, and yours was probably done more at the average of communities back the last time a study was done. 60th percentile is a little more competitive. The 75th is the most competitive with the market, which is beneficial for your recruitment and retention. Now, the total cost to implement that for the 60th percentile is $249,984. Of that, $28,500 is to bring 11 positions up to just the minimum level of the market. The $291,812 is the 75th percentile, and to bring their 14 positions that would need to come just to meet the minimum level, and that's 49,000 of that 291,000. The next slide covers what we have in the appendices. At the end, if you have questions, I'd be happy to answer those. But Appendix A is the market data report, which simply has all the data collected on the salaries from all those 17 communities. Appendix B shows the proposed classification plan. There's one with 14 grades and one with 15 grades. That's the 14 grade level is the 60th percentile. The 75th percentile is the one with 15 grades, and Appendix C has proposed pay plans for each of those. Appendix D covers the benefits portion with health insurance and the appropriated pay. Now, the last slide I have here talks about some of the staffing and organizational observations. We were asked to take a look at that because while we were looking at all the positions, we didn't do a full-scale organization and staffing study, but we did come up with some observations that we felt would be beneficial for you to be aware of. During the course of the study, you did add an assistant city manager position, Bill's position, and we did add that into the classification and pay plan. On the public works and parks and recreation, that's an unusual, very busy operation. In effect, it's two departments put into one. You have a public works and parks and recreation, and previously or currently, I don't know what the final status is right now, you had HR position moving that was working in Parks and Rec and doing human resources, and that's now moving to strictly human resources. With the change in that and the volume and the magnitude of the work in Public Works and Parks and Recreation, it's felt that an assistant director to cover a lot, you have a lot of facilities, there's an awful lot of work that would be helpful to the operation and all these are, if you can, within this budget, if not for future reference, to add that position. In human resources, the HR officer needs clerical assistance with a lot of data entry and that type of work that could be shared, could be part-time. On information technology, IT, that department, you have a unique situation. You have some great employees there, and it's working fine the way it is, although I think some of your personnel can get burned out based on the volume of work. Your director, who worked there previously full-time, is now assisting on a part-time basis remotely. The IT1 position is taking some of that workload being in the office of the director. So that's a position, if you keep things as they are, you might look at that position to reclassify it a little higher. Down the road, at some point, you may want to go back to having a full-time IT director there down the road. In the fire department, I believe this is in progress or has occurred as far as changing the hours from to a 56 work hour week. And with that, you would require additional staffing of 6 personnel. Now, I heard the police chief talk about the police department. We indicated to consider adding a lieutenant's position. One reason, as well as all the comments the chief made about the duties, the sergeants are doing a variety of work, and there's too much of a difference right now between a sergeant and the deputy chief. There's no area to groom. Someone can go from a sergeant's position to be promoted to deputy chief, and there's a big learning curve there. Plus, the lieutenant would be able to handle a lot more of the administrative tasks. So with that, the last slide I have is just if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer on the study. You have a great operation, great people, but you are low on the salary, and the proposed plan would bring you up to be much more competitive for recruitment and retention of your employees. I'd be happy to answer any questions anyone might have.
I'm gonna wait, go ahead, break, and then.
Patty, can you take us off the screen share so we can see?
Yep.
I can't imagine.
Thank you, Bill, for doing my slideshow.
Bill's a good helper. Go ahead, Counselor Green.
Thank you very much, Carol. That was really helpful. I have a couple questions about some of the terms that you mentioned. The cost out plan, presumably that's how we would catch up over a period of years. Is that right?
Well,
Or
the cost that's proposed, the first amounts I gave were just to bring people to the minimum level. If that's all you wanted to do, the cost would be, depending on which pay plan you went with, $28,500 or $49,000. The additional cost, which is more significant, was actually calculated by the city, looking at different scenarios in order to place your personnel. For example, someone with 10 years of service, and I don't know the final years they utilize, but looking at years of service, if someone were there 10 years and they were hiring someone from outside at a similar position, they should be making substantially more, the current employee. So that large figure you have is to bring your current people where they should be within the pay scale. Otherwise, you end up with significant compression issues.
Right. Okay.
And you can have various options of planning, of paying for, funding for it, but the way the market is now, if it's phased too long, it's going to be difficult to recruit and retain people.
I'm just wondering if you presented some scenarios beyond the 60%, 75% options.
Those were the ones that we looked at in working with the city. We started out looking at the average, which kept them still way behind. The 60th percentile, and that's what we're seeing. Most communities are having to go higher than they typically would, just because they can't recruit the personnel.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Counselor Frankie.
Thank you, Ms. Greenfield. I think, to me, the most significant thing in your report, aside from the wages, which I knew was going to be a particular issue for the city, but the concept of giving some organization and structure to the different levels of work, and to try to make some sense out of what the various positions from all the different departments, and to get that organized. So I'd like to thank you for that. I think that's one of the things that the city's needed to do for quite some time.
Yeah, but we see a lot of operations, and that's why it was beneficial to take a look at that, not full scale, but it was pretty evident just based on what we see that some of those changes would be most beneficial organizationally.
Anyone else? I got one. So in your study, you've used the word equity multiple times. Can you explain the reasoning for that?
Well, we look at, as you'll see in a classification plan, when it groups different positions in there, and internal equity means you might have several different positions, types of positions in one grade level, but their responsibility levels are similar, and that's where we group them to have equity. So, for example, you do have department heads in some cases at different grade levels. You have other positions, say a planning position is different than another department in recreation. So we group that so those classified in the same grade level are all similar in responsibility. We looked at 14 different factors for what's involved with those positions, and they're very similar in their responsibility level. Could be supervisory, could be other aspects, accountability, complexity of work. So that's where, if you don't have that, then you have people that are working either at too low a grade level or too high a grade level. It's not based on performance at all. So many of those, we don't look at performance at all when we're doing a study like this.
So my second question is, I know you looked at other town, or at least similar type towns to look at. Did you look at the demographics of the people that work for our city?
We did not look at the demographics as to where they were working from, so we did not get into that piece.
How do we know how can we be certain that the women who work in our town aren't getting paid less than the men to do the same job? Was that part of this study?
That we didn't, that's another piece we do sometimes. We did not do that in this study. It's something we could look at in addition, and that's another calculation and looking at the level, but we did not do that in this study.
That's disappointing. Good.
So when you say that there are 11 or 14 positions to adjust, are those roles or individuals?
They're individuals.
Okay.
For example, there were some, I believe, might have been in dispatching. It might have been new individuals in dispatching that didn't meet the new minimum level. So those are individuals, not total positions.
Mm-hmm. And would it be possible to, with the new gradations of responsibility that you created, to look at the issue of gender equity, for us to do that internally?
And I'm sure in the makeup, that's something that would require, some other calculations to take a look at that. I think you have all the data there as far as the makeup of the individuals in the positions, but that would take another aspect. And it's something, if you want that looked at in addition, we could work with the city to do that.
We got the data. That's, Counselor Foss?
I want her to say that she's got the data. That's where I want to go with that. Do you have the data at your disposal, or do you need more input from the city? And then my second question to piggyback on that is, how long would it take? Days, weeks, months?
It probably would take a few weeks just to take a look at that.
And do you have the data?
I'd have to see if we had the data or if I'd have to get additional data from the city.
10-4, thank you.
Bill, can you put a pin in that so we can get that information?
Yep, I'll make sure that Bobby Joe and I work on that with Carol.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Good luck with your budget.
Thank you.
All right. Human resources.
No pressure.
Hi.
All right.
Okay. So, of course, am I on? Yeah. I am. So of course, the increase in my budget deals with a salary study, as well as union contract increases. So that is the only increase in my budget.
Is the position not in your budget?
It is not currently in my budget.
How much does that add to your budget?
I can tell you that. I brought that with me.
I mean, it really doesn't do you any good to not have that position in your budget. It's going to mess up everything else. I mean, let's be honest. The person that's going to help you can't help you if we don't get the other. It doesn't work.
So with benefits and everything, it's $49,730.
That is less than I thought it was going to be. What?
So, and that's the position to support
HR and
HR and
Matt,
public work.
Public Works, yes.
Two for.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Can I?
Yeah.
Okay. Bobby Joe, I
Yes.
love you.
Yes.
Let's start out there. If you don't put, and this goes for all department heads, if you don't put the wants in there, if you guys don't put the wants in there, we can't say no to it, but we can't say yes to it either.
I did. It was pulled out, not by me.
Yeah,
I
think
did put it in there.
all the positions
All
were
the
pulled out,
positions were cut after.
except for,
Okay, when
Yep.
we started going up.
Two.
Got it.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, but, I don't know.
Go ahead
We
and
didn't
say
get
it.
through it. We didn't even get through a first vote, and things were being hauled out.
Yep.
And I get the point. I get the reason. Okay, but we didn't even get to look at everything and say, hey, you know what? We're over budget, and how do we get from where we are to where we want to be, and what makes the most sense? And a collective body, being what it is, would have been great to have all that input. We could have spent several hours on it. I know me and Claude would go all over it, but 49K is nothing to me. But
I think that having the recommendations that were actually in the report are really crucial as well.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Counselor Frankie.
Well, I think you're absolutely right, Rick, that if this was the end of March and we were looking at all these things, we'd be in a lot better shape than we are today. But I think the bottom line, if I'm correct, Bill, is that bottom line is not looking so good at this point, which is why all of the positions got pulled out. Is that correct, Bill?
Yes, Councilor Frankie, that's exactly right. Remember that you're looking at the city manager's proposed budget, and once he saw the bottom line, he removed all the capital items as well as all of those new positions that were, many of them were slated to start in the January 1st timeline. But we wanted to try to limit the impact as much as we could. And as we stand currently, we're still looking for $975,000, what the shortfall is currently, if the council uses just the 1.685 from undesignated funding.
And as far as that goes, we're still, I see in the packet that you gave us today that there is a request from the schools for an amount of money. But do I understand that they have started in with their collective bargaining negotiations with the teachers yet?
I'm not sure where that stands, Councilor.
When we talked to them at the city school finance committee last month, they still had not started collective bargaining negotiations with the teachers, and I'm guessing that although the teachers were not in this wage study, my guess is that the Waterville teachers are probably about as far behind as the rest of the Waterville employees. So we may be looking at a bigger ask from the school than they've made so far.
Anybody else have questions for Bobby Joe? We're gonna figure that out. I mean,
Thank you.
why throw a monkey wrench in it for 50 grand?
That's just my half, but
I know, we'll figure it out.
I just wanted to point
I
that
know.
out, that's just for my budget. The other half would be in public works, so, okay. Thank you.
Have a good
So-
one. Oh, go ahead, sorry.
I'm not sure this is a question for you, actually, Bobby Joe, but I'm just wondering, obviously, we need to, well, I guess I'm wondering, what's the next step with deciding how that increase in the human resources budget is going to be placed in the various individual budgets? What does that look like?
So it sounds like that's a.
It's a Bill question. I'm not sure Bill's gonna have the answer to that right now.
I can attempt to answer that, councilors. So it currently, as you know, is in a one line within the HR budget for non-union wage increases, based on the recommendation of a 75th percentile, as well as also in that line is an allowance for union wage negotiations that are ongoing now with the two unions that weren't settled, union contracts that weren't settled so far. So that's all in that one line. If
And it's included in the budget at the moment.
once the council decides or approves going with the 75th percentile, which is the manager's recommendation, then we could break out those individual department impacts from that HR line and add them into the individual departments. And I would recommend, doing it with just one line within the departments to say, allowance for wage increase, so it mirrors what we have in HR, but we would then, move it out of HR and move it into the individual departments, and then you'd be able to see what kind of impact it has department by department.
Well, I think it would be helpful to have a comparison as to what 60% looks like versus 75%. I mean, again, it's only 50,000, but we really do have some difficult decisions to make here. So I think we need things broken down a little more.
I think working with Bobby Joe, I don't want to speak for her, but I think we could probably do that and show you overall and break down by department. It'll take a little bit of work, but I think we could probably do that.
Any other questions for Bill? Oh, Councilor Frankie.
While you're at that doing a little extra work, Bill, and I know that doing a little extra work is no big deal for you because you haven't been all that busy. I'm being facetious, of course. Would it be possible to get a estimate or a number of the overall wage increase that we're doing, including the wages that we've negotiated through collective bargaining, as well as what we're recommending for the non-union staff after the wage study, just so that the taxpayers can see that this is it's what I'm guessing it's more than $1 million, and that's what's I think one of the main things that is making it appear like our budget is going through the roof. But as I've said several times now, we're trying to make our employees pay them at competitive rates so that we can keep them and so that we can hire new people and make Waterville an attractive place to work. But I do think that the taxpayers should understand that before we ask them to raise taxes.
Yeah, again, it would take some work, but we certainly can do that.
All right. Rock and roll. That's the end of the budget meeting. And we're gonna go right into city council. You ready, Chad? All right. Good evening. This is a non-regularly scheduled meeting of the Waterville City Council. There are agendas available in the file pockets near the entrance or on the City of Waterville's website. All items appearing in the consent agenda are voted on in one motion and vote. Generally, these items are routine in nature and do not require discussion. All items listed under unfinished business or new business are voted on separately. First, councilors will be given an opportunity for questions or comments. Once councilors have had an opportunity to speak, citizens will be given an opportunity for comments or questions. Citizens must speak at the podium and identify themselves. Each citizen will be allowed one opportunity to speak and will be limited to 3 minutes. Finally, councilors will be given another opportunity to speak. Citizens who would like to speak on a topic that does not appear on tonight's agenda will have an opportunity to do so at the end of the meeting. Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Almost messed that up. Play ball.
Any disclosure of conflict of interest? Nope, Rick doesn't have one this
Mr.
week.
Mayor, I have a motion to read the entire agenda by title only.
Second.
Patty, gonna roll call on that?
Counsel Morris?
Yes.
Counsel DeBrito?
Yes.
Counsel Klepak? Counsel Green?
Yes.
Counsel Foss?
Yes.
Counsel Frankie?
Yes.
Counsel McCormick?
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
All right, I'll say this before we get started. I'm gonna move on to Resolution 125, 2022.
Accept the report of Municipal Resources Incorporated for the Comprehensive Benefit and Salary Study.
Move to adopt.
Second.
I think you guys should accept this one. I mean, it's a salary study, we're just going to accept it, but I think that in lieu of what we don't know, between 65 and 75% of the 75%, that on the very next one, you punt it down the road. Any discussion on this one? To the first meeting of the first June meeting. Claude?
Well, just to echo what you're saying, Jay, we're simply accepting delivery of the report with this resolution. We're not doing anything except putting our hand out and saying, oh, here it is, thank you.
Yep.
Yep.
Here's the check. Any other questions or any comments? Patty, can I get a roll call?
Counsel Morris?
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry,
Oh,
Tom.
I'm sorry.
So we're accepting this, or we gonna wait for the rest of the information to come from this lady?
You know, we have to accept the portion that we've already gotten.
Okay,
You know what I mean?
that's what I'm checking on.
How's that?
Yep.
Counsel Morris?
Yes.
Counsel DeBrito?
think we
You're
lost her.
muted, Flavia.
Yes,
Thank
yes,
you.
sorry.
Counselor Klepak?
Yes.
Counselor Green?
Yes.
Counselor Foss?
Yes.
Counselor Frankie?
Yes,
Counselor McCormick?
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
All right, moving on to ordinance 126, 2022.
Amend the personnel policy to reflect the comprehensive benefit and salary study 2022.
Motion to adopt.
Second.
I make a motion that we table this till the next regularly scheduled city council meeting.
Oh, Claude, I need a second.
Need a second.
Second.
Okay,
Thank you.
can I give, go ahead, Claude.
here, I'm only going to speak to the motion to table. My question is, how expeditiously do we need to act on this in terms of the budget season? I think that's probably directed at you, Bill.
Yeah, I think it certainly can be tabled. Obviously, the council still has 2 readings to do with the budget, and there's a lot of discussion that will need to be had around the wages. So I think it would make sense to table it till you have more information in front of you, as was requested tonight.
Counselor Green.
I have a question, I guess, for Patty regarding what this ordinance is really doing. Is it saying that we're going to abide by the study, but leaving it open as to how? Or, what are we actually voting on here?
Well, currently, the personnel policy refers to the classification and compensation study that was completed in 2005. So if we're accepting the recommendations, which we've just done, to accept the study, then it seems reasonable that we would want to refer to the new study in our personnel policy.
And then make amendments to the 60 versus 75%.
Once the decision is made through the budget process of which pay plan you want to include, then we can include that.
Okay.
So this ordinance is really saying now that we've accepted this study, we're going to follow its recommendations, but it doesn't obligate us
To either
It's
to anything in particular.
correct, because that happens through the budget process.
Right. Okay.
Makes sense.
Are we held to these 60 and 75, or can we split the difference?
You can decide that as a group tomorrow. You can decide that you can go 64%. Those are the ranges that they're showing
No,
you that
that's-
we're sort of
that's-
deficient in.
That's why
Yep.
are we held to this, or can we split the
No,
difference?
you can split the difference and figure it out. You're the council. You can do whatever you want at that point. Well, not whatever you want, but close to it.
I'm not opposed to tabling, but I do think that this is also seems to be
Routine.
kind of perfunctory.
Yeah.
Well, I haven't read the report, not even one page.
Yeah,
So I
no,
can't vote on something I haven't read. Second of all, we've got numbers that we want in. And I realize that that's kind of both sides of this coin, is budget and this, but I want to see what those breakdowns are. And again, I haven't read any of it other than it said table of contents.
You did just accept it, though.
I know I did.
What, regardless of,
But
But that wasn't going to change.
I know. I'm totally with you, Rick. And like I said, I won't object to table. I just want to make sure
Yeah.
we're clear. But
Yeah.
yes, we need a lot more time to absorb this.
Yeah, 45 pages. I'm a slow reader.
And really, the meeting's like next week.
Yeah,
Well,
that would be
June.
be the second. I
We
mean,
have-
and that would be the second vote. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, nothing's going to change the acceptance of this policy with regard to anything that we discuss, whether it's 65 or 75% or whatever those numbers are. It doesn't change any of that to point to this particular document that we accepted. So reading it, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, I get it, but if there's anything that's going to change, I mean, we could, from a perspective of efficiency and moving things down the line, we take one, we can always postpone the second vote. You know, we've already have that one, and if there is a, you know, a chain in which we need to do things, we're already one in the hole, and we don't push everything back months or
It
weeks.
doesn't sound like we're in fear of pushing anything anywhere. It just seems like, I think we're gonna hit July easy. Even if that means that we have to have, you know, a second vote on budget, within a week of the first one,
You can always add it to the other day.
you know?
Bobby Joe, you said something about this having to be completed by the end of June, this vote.
So and I'm going off what I remember from my conversation with Steve, so please bear with me. If you want to implement it into the budget, then it would make sense to have it in the personnel ordinance. But,
Which we can do on the last day that we finalize the budget.
yes.
Can I throw something out there? On
Well,
this voting thing? Can we, Patty, do we have enough time to do it next Tuesday? I just need time to read it. That's all I need.
We could bring it back at any point if we have another special meeting.
Which we're gonna have
Between-
other budget meetings.
We
can
have other
just
budget
tack it.
workshops, we could make it a special meeting and have a first reading, if you postpone the first
We
reading tonight.
actually have a meeting every week in June, don't we?
Yes, pretty much.
I can say yes to this now.
But he's already got it.
Who cares?
I'll just vote on his amendment. I'll get a roll call on it.
You got Claude with a hand up.
Well, we keep going off track, and once he's voted for, but go ahead, Claude, I'm gonna give you one more opportunity, sir.
Well, just a quick comment to Bill. Would you have the city attorney take a look at at our ordinance and then explain to us what kind of liability the city might or might not be putting itself at risk at? It's an ordinance, so that means it's a rule of law. So it would be nice to have the legal opinion that we're not stepping all over ourselves.
Yes, I can do that, counsel.
Thank you.
Now I'm gonna take a roll call, Patty. There you go.
So the motion is to table.
Yes.
Counsel Morris?
Yes.
Counsel DeBrito?
Yes.
Counsel Klepak?
Yeah.
Counsel Green?
Yes.
Counsel Foss?
Yes.
Counsel Frankie?
Yes.
Counsel McCormick?
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Public comments? No, we got a lively crowd here.
Chad?
Do we have anybody online?
No.
You have councilor comments.
Oh, I do?
Yes. That's on my agenda.
Counselor comments.
All right, we'll go to councilor comments.
Flavia has one.
Flavia.
Well, I mean, it's just an observation that I observed at the light right at Walgreens on Main Street. That light, the sensor on it, I think it is a little bit off because once the light turns red, it allows at least a couple of a couple of seconds for cars to actually go forward, and cars are getting stuck there, like between the intersection coming out, and there's cars getting stuck there. So I observed it myself today, so I just wanted to bring that up. It seems like there's something wrong with the sensor of the light because of the construction that's going on. So I'm not sure if anybody else observed that as well.
I don't drive that road, but I'm gonna take your word for it.
Yeah, it's right on Main Street. It feels like it needs to be, the sensor needs to be tweaked a little bit because of the construction.
All right.
I can email John Lombardi, who does the traffic lights,
Yep.
and let him know.
Appreciate that. Any other
Okay.
councilors?
Well, we might even want to talk to the chief about possibly putting a person to direct traffic there because it's starting to become a little unwieldy. So you might bring that up with the chief, Bill, and see if might not have to be all day, but the busy times of the day, in the evening and in the morning, might not be a bad idea.
And with that, it's a motion to adjourn.